My daughter said I was too old, too slow, and too much of a burden. So she put me in a nursing home without my consent and moved into my house like I was already dead. But I wasn't confused. I wasn't finished. And while she thought I'd fade away quietly, I was planning something else. Something she'd feel every time she opened her front door. This is how I made her regret the day she ever underestimated her mother. I raised my daughter with hands that bled and a heart that never stopped stretching. Emily was all I had after my husband passed. I scrubbed floors until my knees cracked. I skipped meals when money got tight. I pawned my wedding band to buy her graduation dress. And I never once asked for thanks. I just thought love would come back around when it mattered. When I fainted in the kitchen that Tuesday morning, I didn't think much of it. Probably blood sugar. I was standing too long on an empty stomach. Emily rushed over that evening with her husband Mark, acting all concerned. "Mama, we just want what's best for you," she said while Mark nodded like he rehearsed it. They offered to help me settle my affairs. That was the phrase Emily used like I was already halfway gone. They brought over soup, asked me about old documents, and kept telling me how hard it must be to keep up a house at your age. I didn't know that behind my back they'd already spoken to a lawyer. I didn't know they were whispering to neighbors that I was slipping mentally. I didn't know Mark had already started changing the locks. A week later, they invited me out to lunch. Said it was just the three of us. "You need a break." Emily smiled. "We're going to spoil you." I didn't pack a bag. I didn't bring my phone charger. I didn't even wear my good shoes. They dropped me off at a place with beige walls and plastic flowers in the hallway. "Just for a few days," Emily said. "Rest up. The nurse will help you get settled." Then she hugged me tight like she meant it. Mark kissed my cheek, his stubble rough on my skin. And then they walked out the door and never came back. The room had no family photos, no calendar, no books, just a single dresser and a bed I didn't choose. I asked the nurse for a phone to call my daughter. She said, "You'll have to wait until visiting hours." I said, "She just left." She looked confused. Then she showed me a form, my name, her signature, BOXES checked, medical consent, residential admission, observation status. She'd committed me. I sat on the edge of that unfamiliar bed with my hands folded like I was in church, staring at the floor, trying not to shake, but I shook anyway. The next morning, I asked the front desk if I could speak with the administrator. I told her there must have been a mistake. I wasn't senile. I wasn't dying. She looked at me like I was a ghost asking to come back. "Your daughter said you're not safe on your own. Said you had confusion spells. We were told to expect long-term placement." I wanted to scream, but I didn't because deep down something told me screaming would only prove them right. So I waited. I waited in that little room for 3 days. On the 4th day, I finally got access to a phone. I called Emily straight to voicemail. I called again and again. Then I tried Mark, rang once then, blocked. The same man who used to cry in my kitchen about how hard fatherhood was had blocked me. I sat in that stiff back chair, looking out the window at a courtyard full of people who barely remembered their names. Some drooled. Some yelled at the air. Some just stared into nothing. And I thought, is this how I end after everything I gave? After everything I held back to make sure she had a future? No. That night, I asked the night nurse for a pen and a notebook. I told her I liked to journal. She smiled kindly and brought me a little spiral one from the activities closet. I didn't write poetry. I didn't write prayers. I wrote facts, dates, transactions, account numbers, people I remembered, deeds I still owned, contacts I had. My lawyer, Monica Reeves, who hadn't heard from me in 2 years, but never took me off her client list. I wrote everything down like it was a battle plan as it was. I wasn't confused. I wasn't delusional, and I damn sure wasn't dead. They thought I wouldn't notice the bank account freeze. They thought I wouldn't recognize that my name was missing from my own utility bills. They thought that just because I was old I couldn't fight. But I raised a woman. I survived a marriage. I survived breast cancer. No, I was going to survive this too. But I wouldn't just survive. I'd return, and when I did, I wouldn't ask for my keys back. I'd sell the whole damn house and buy the one next door just to watch Emily's face every morning. She stepped outside thinking she won, because sometimes the quietest woman in the room is just waiting for her moment, and mine was coming. Monica Reeves didn't answer the phone the first time I called. Can't say I blamed her. It had been years, but I left a message. Short, sharp, and deliberate. Monica, this is Dolores Mayfield. I believe my daughter has committed fraud using my name and placed me in a facility against my will. I still have access to the joint account and legal documents. Call me. She returned my call before lunch the next day. Mrs. Mayfield, she said, sounding startled. Are you safe? As safe as a woman can be when her only child locks her away and thinks she won't bite back. She paused. Tell me everything. So I did. She came to see me that Friday, drove 3 hours in the rain, marched through the front doors of the facility, and told the nurse she was my attorney. The staff got nervous, real nervous. I could tell by the way the manager pulled her aside and tried to explain. Monica wasn't having it. She came into my room with a briefcase and a fire in her eyes. You're not staying here another week, she said. And if they give us trouble, we sue them, too. It felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in weeks. We went over everything. The documents Emily had forged. The power of attorney I never signed. The deed to the house that still listed my name and only mine. The joint account Emily thought I'd forgotten about. I had never removed her. But she didn't know I still had access. I'd been quiet for too long. You want to go nuclear? Monica asked. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, no, I want to go biblical, she grinned. Let's start with a revocation. You're still mentally competent. You still have your rights. First thing we do is strip her of every bit of legal control she thinks she has. Within days, Monica filed an emergency motion to revoke the forged POA, submitted a capacity evaluation from the facility's own doctor, who had told me privately he saw no signs of dementia. We opened a case against Emily for elder exploitation and misrepresentation of legal documents. And we froze the account she used to pay her fancy mortgage. I left the nursing home on a Wednesday afternoon. No goodbyes, no farewell hugs, just a bag of clothes Monica bought for me and a slow walk out the front door. Freedom never smelled so sweet. We didn't go back to my house. I didn't want to. Monica booked us into a private suite at an extended stay for the weekend, while we worked out the next step. Emily didn't know I was out yet, but oh, she would. That weekend, Monica filed a petition to enforce a partition sale of the property. Since Emily was living in a home she didn't legally own, and I had not given consent for her to stay, we had every right to force a sale. If she refused to vacate, we'd go through the courts and law enforcement would remove her. And because I was still the legal owner, every dime would come to me. I pictured her and Mark sitting on my velvet couch, sipping wine they couldn't afford, bragging about how they inherited a house from a confused old lady. They didn't inherit anything. They stole it, and now they were going to choke on it. The process took about a week to move through preliminary hearings. We served them the paperwork at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. According to Monica's private process server, Mark screamed. Emily turned ghost white and slammed the door. I didn't need to witness it. Knowing was enough. That evening, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring. Then it rang again. Then again. I finally answered. Mom, Emily's voice was low, almost childlike. We got something in the mail today. Is this real? I didn't respond. She continued, you can't be serious. You're going to kick me out of my own house. I took a breath and said, you mean the house you threw me out of? She went silent. I never signed the documents, I continued. You forged my name, froze my accounts, and tried to erase me. That's not what happened. I was left in a nursing home with no warning and no clothes. I was lied to, manipulated, and legally violated. So yes, Emily, I'm serious. Mom, listen. Mark thought. I don't care what Mark thought. You're the one I raised. And you let him put me in a box before I was even buried. Her voice shook. You're really going through with this? Yes, I said. And you have 30 days to get out. I hung up before she could respond. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Monica and I drank sparkling cider out of paper cups and watched old game shows in our hotel room. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, my choice, my moment. The next morning, we met with the buyer, a young Hispanic couple, newly married, looking for their first home. They loved the garden, loved the arched hallway, loved the soul of the place. I think it wants to be filled with love again, the wife said, running her hand along the kitchen counter. I nodded. It does. I accepted their full cash offer by the end of the day. We closed in less than 2 weeks. Emily didn't say a word, but Mark did. She sent me a message on Facebook. Mom, we're your family. I can't believe you're doing this. This was our future. I stared at it for a long moment, then typed one sentence back. No, I was your past. And you buried me too early. Then I blocked him. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed and waited for moving day because I had one more step left in this plan. And I was saving the best for last. The last time I walked through my old house, it was nearly empty. Just dust shadows on the floor, where my furniture used to sit, and a faint scent of vanilla from the oil diffuser Mark insisted on using in every room. The kind that always gave me a headache. They were gone. Emily didn't fight the court-ordered sale. She didn't even show up for the final inspection. Mark left a box of half-used colognes and a note, taped to the fridge that sighed, "You'll regret this." But I didn't regret a thing. The sale went through clean and legal. The young couple was thrilled. They called it their dream home. I shook their hands at closing and wished them well. And just like that, the house I once scrubbed clean with my bare hands, the home I gave up everything to preserve, now belonged to someone who would respect it. With the money from the sale wired into my account, Monica asked the big question. Ready for step 2? I smiled. Oh, I've been waiting for step 2. We didn't rush. That's the trick. Revenge shouldn't come hot. It should come cool, deliberate, patient. We waited for Emily and Mark to finish moving out. We waited for the neighborhood gossip to die down. And then I did something they never saw coming. I bought the house next door. Cozy one-story with a lilac bush out front and a back porch that faced their kitchen window. Perfect. I paid in full, no mortgage. Monica did the paperwork. I signed with a pen that shook a little in my hand. Not from weakness, but from the sheer satisfaction of what I was about to do. I didn't even tell Liam, my grandson. Not yet. I needed this moment to be mine first. The first day I moved in, I wore my best Sunday hat and sat on the front steps with a cup of sweet tea. Just sat watching the world pass, like any ordinary grandmother. And then Emily stepped outside. She was wearing yoga pants and a wrinkled blouse, holding a trash bag in one hand and a phone in the other. She looked tired. The way a woman looks when she realizes the comfort around her was never really hers. She froze when she saw me. I smiled. She turned around and went right back inside. I didn't move. I had waited too long for this view. 4 days after that, Mark avoided eye contact. He pulled their curtains tighter. He parked on the opposite side of the driveway. The audacity of what I'd done was too much for his pride to process. But I wasn't done. I started planting lilacs along the fence, bright purple ones that bloomed like memories. Monica called it petty. I called it peaceful warfare. Every morning I sat on my porch and waved at the mailman. I chatted with the neighbors they had ignored. I baked empanadas for the couple I sold the old house to. And every evening I watched Emily through the blinds as she tried not to see me. Mark's car started leaving earlier in the morning. Sometimes he didn't come back for days. Emily stayed inside most of the time. Lights on at 2 TV flickering through the curtains. I could only imagine what their conversations sounded like, but I didn't have to imagine for long. One afternoon, Liam came walking down the sidewalk with his backpack slung low. He hesitated at the fence, then crossed over and knocked on my door. I opened it slowly. "Grandma," he said, "can I sit with you a while?" I didn't ask questions. I just opened the screen and let him in. We sat on the porch side by side. I poured him a glass of iced tea, just like I used to when he was little and afraid of thunderstorms. He didn't say much at first. Then he said, "I heard what they did." "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. I just looked at him. "They told me you had dementia," he said. "Said you weren't safe alone, but you don't look confused to me." I gave him a soft smile. "I never was." He leaned forward. "Why'd you buy the house next door?" "Because your mother needed a reminder," I said. "One she could see from her front porch every day." Liam snorted. "You're colder than I thought, Grandma." I laughed. Real full laugh. "No, baby. I'm just finished pretending I owe anyone my silence." He stayed for dinner that night. Told me he missed my arroz con palo. That his father never learned how to season anything properly. I didn't ask about their marriage. I didn't need to. Some storms speak for themselves. The next morning, Emily came to my door. I didn't flinch. I didn't get up. She stood on the porch, hat in her hand like a child, ready to lie. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. I sipped my tea. "Doing what?" "Living here across the street watching us." I tilted my head. "I bought this house because I liked the view." "You're trying to humiliate me." I shook my head. "No, Emily, that part already happened. You did that when you called me a burden." She looked away. I continued. "I raised you alone, carried you through everything, and when I needed help, you left me in a room with strangers. Called it mercy, called it love." I thought. "No," I interrupted. "You didn't think. You took, you erased. You assumed I wouldn't fight back." She had no words. I stood slowly and walked to the door. "This is my peace, Emily. Don't knock unless you plan to earn your way back into it." Then I closed the door. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I just sat back in my chair and watched the lilacs bloom because the view never looked better. Some people think closure comes when someone says sorry. I don't believe that. I believe closure comes when you can sit in silence and know you no longer care what they think. When their presence no longer stirs your blood. When your peace is so loud it drowns out their shame. That's the kind of silence I woke up to every morning. Now the lilacs along my fence were blooming brighter. My kitchen smelled like lemon polish and fresh cafecito. I had started painting again. Small canvases at first, just color studies. Then one morning, I painted a picture of my old house from memory. Except I replaced the windows with fog because that's what it felt like now. A beautiful place haunted by people who couldn't see straight. Emily had stopped speaking to me. Not a word since that morning on my porch. I'd seen her walk out to check the mailbox or take the trash out, but she never glanced my way. That was fine. I wasn't looking for reconciliation. I was looking for truth to sit with her like a shadow she couldn't shake. Mark, on the other hand, had become louder, passive-aggressively loud. He threw backyard barbecues, blasting music during dinner time. He hosted beer tastings on the porch, laughing just loud enough to float over the fence. I could hear him when he talked about me to the guests. I mean, she's clearly lonely. Why else would she move next door? She's obsessed with us? It's creepy. She needs to let it go. We're happy. She's bitter. I didn't respond, not once, because happy people don't need to shout it from the lawn. Then one Sunday morning, I looked outside and saw a for sale sign go up in their yard. I nearly spilled my tea. It was crooked at first, like they had rushed to shove it in the ground. Emily stood beside it, arms crossed, her shoulders tight. Mark came out minutes later, still in his robe, screaming at her. I couldn't hear the words, but her body said enough. Pointing, yelling, pacing. I watched from my porch like it was a matinee. I wasn't gloating. Not really. I was witnessing the storm I'd already survived, finally reaching the people who built it. Later that week, Liam came over again. He'd been coming more often. Said he liked the quiet here. Said he missed real food. I didn't ask too many questions, but I noticed the way he never stayed the night at home anymore. He was 14, caught between two parents who lied and a grandmother they tried to erase. He asked if he could help me with the garden. I handed him gloves and a shovel. You know, he said while planting new hibiscus. I heard them talking about moving. Dad wants to go back to Florida. I nodded. And your mother? She doesn't want to leave, but she doesn't want to stay here either. Why not? Liam looked up at me. Because every time she looks outside, she sees you. I didn't say anything, just patted the dirt down and smiled. That night, I pulled out the notebook I'd used at the nursing home, the one I filled with my plan, the facts, the names, the account numbers. I wrote one final sentence at the bottom of the last page. They thought they buried me. They didn't know I was a seed. Then I closed it for good. 2 weeks later, the for sale sign came down, but not because the house sold, because Mark moved out. I saw him drive away with his trunk full of boxes and his mouth pressed shut. No hugs, no goodbyes. He didn't even glance at Emily on the porch. Just got in his car and drove off like he couldn't get away fast enough. Emily sat outside for hours that evening alone. No music, no beer, just her and the echo of everything she destroyed. I thought about going over saying something, offering her a piece of what she never gave me, but I didn't because her silence wasn't mine to fix. Later that night, Liam knocked on my door. He left, he said. Didn't even say goodbye. I let him in, made hot chocolate, let him sit on the couch and stare at the wall while my little salsa radio played in the background. I don't get it, he said eventually. They had everything. I looked at him. No, baby. They took everything and they built it on lies. That doesn't last. He nodded slowly. Can I stay here tonight? He asked. I blinked. Of course, I said. Anytime. He stayed that whole weekend. We cooked together, played dominoes. I showed him old photos of his grandfather, told him stories Emily never bothered to tell. He laughed. Really laughed. And I saw something in him that made my heart crack open a little. He still had goodness. Still had time to choose a different path. Maybe this story wasn't just about revenge. Maybe it was about reclaiming something bigger. A name, a legacy, a love that doesn't vanish just because someone called it inconvenient. As I tucked Liam into the guest room that night, he turned to me and whispered, "You're not a burden, Grandma." I smiled through tears. I know, baby. I know that now. And with the porch light glowing and the curtains drawn, I sat by the window watching the house next door. Now quiet, now dim, now hollow. And I thought, this is what justice sounds like. Not rage, not noise, just the hum of peace returning where pain once lived. It had been 3 weeks since Mark left. The once bustling house next door was starting to look like a shell. No more barbecues, no more loud beer nights, no porch lights left on. The curtains stayed drawn even during the day. Emily's car barely moved. It sat there gathering pollen, as if even it had given up trying. Funny, isn't it? All that noise, all that showboating, and now nothing but quiet. Sometimes I'd see her through the window, sitting on the couch in the same wrinkled blouse, eyes vacant, like the walls were speaking to her, and she couldn't answer back. Other times she'd sit outside, on the steps with a glass, of wine in her hand and a look on her face like she was still trying to make sense of how it all slipped through her fingers. She never looked over at me, but she didn't need to. She could feel me there, just like I'd once felt the cold absence of her voice when I was locked in that nursing home, wondering why my only daughter had abandoned me, like I was a burden too heavy to carry. And now she was carrying it alone. Liam had practically moved in with me by then. He split time between my house and school. Emily barely noticed. At least that's what Liam said. I don't think she cares anymore. Liam told me one night over a plate of bistec and tostones. She just stares at the TV, doesn't even change the channel. I didn't say anything. What could I say? It's hard to pity a woman who stole your dignity and buried you alive. But it's also hard to hate the girl you once held against your chest and sang to during thunderstorms. Love is complicated like that. Liam was doing better, though. His eyes had light again. He smiled more. He helped in the garden, helped in the kitchen, and asked questions about his family history. Real questions. Questions Emily never cared to answer. That Friday, we went down to the senior center together and dropped off some groceries. I saw a few familiar faces. One of the volunteers pulled me aside and whispered, "We heard what she did to you, Miss Dolores. We're so sorry." I just smiled and said, "God restores what people try to ruin." They nodded, eyes soft with understanding. I could see they'd been watching from afar, just like everyone else. The whole neighborhood knew by now. That was the other part of revenge people don't talk about. It spreads, not because you shout about it, but because silence leaves a trail even louder than screaming. And Emily's silence. It was ringing through the community like a church bell after a funeral. That weekend, I went to the community center and dropped off a check, $10,000, anonymous donation. I didn't want credit. It was for their new senior outreach program. A friend told me they were trying to expand meal delivery services for elders who lived alone because I knew I wasn't the only one who had been made to feel like dead weight in their own family. I wanted to make sure no one else would be thrown away as easily as I was. Liam helped me deliver it. "Why don't you put your name on it?" he asked. "Because the people who need it don't care who gave it. They just need to know someone did." He nodded thoughtfully. That Sunday, Emily came to my porch. I was baking flan. The smell must have drawn her out. She stood there for a long time before knocking. I opened the door, wiped my hands on a towel, and waited. She looked different, tired, like someone who hadn't slept well in weeks. "I wanted to talk," she said. I stepped outside, but didn't invite her in. She looked down at the porch floor. "Mark's not coming back." I said nothing. I tried to fix things, but everything fell apart. So I said nothing. Then she looked up at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw the girl I used to know hiding somewhere behind those broken eyes. "I messed up, Mama." The words fell like bricks. I thought I was doing the right thing. I don't know. I got scared. I didn't want to lose everything trying to take care of you. "You didn't take care of me," I said, quiet but sharp. "You got rid of me." She nodded slowly, guilt swelling behind her eyes. "I was wrong." I waited, then said, "And now?" "I don't expect anything. I just wanted to say it." I took a deep breath. "You thought you could bury me, Emily," I said. "But you didn't know what I had left in me. You forgot what I gave up to build that house, to raise you, to keep your lights on, to put food on your table." She looked down again. "I didn't forget," she whispered. I tried to rewrite the ending and I was wrong." I nodded once, then said, "Liam is safe with me. He can stay as long as he needs. But you've got some soul searching to do, and you won't do it on this porch." Then I turned and went back inside. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I let the smell of flan fill the house and I set the table for two. Liam came down the stairs a few minutes later. "Was that her?" I nodded. "What did she say?" "Nothing I haven't already heard in my heart," I said. but it's not my job to carry her anymore. He sat at the table. I'm glad you're my grandma. I smiled. Me too, baby. Me too. Outside, Emily sat on her porch alone again. And I let her, because peace once reclaimed is not something you ever surrender again. You don't always get the ending you thought you wanted. Sometimes you get something better. I never imagined I'd spend the last chapter of my life living next door to my own daughter after she betrayed me. I never pictured raising my grandson a second time. And I sure never thought peace would come, not through reconciliation, but through boundaries. But here I am, still standing, still breathing, still free. Emily never left the neighborhood. She didn't sell the house even after Mark packed up his car and disappeared back to Florida. She stayed put. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was shame. Or maybe she thought she could fix it by proximity. But I didn't want proximity. I wanted distance with meaning. She tried a few more times to visit. A wave here, a knock there, but I kept our interactions short. Polite, controlled, because I'd already lived through the storm and I wasn't about to let the wind back in. Liam had settled into a rhythm at my house. He called it our place now. He started getting better grades again. He even joined a youth cooking club and asked if we could grow cilantro next season. Of course we could. We could grow whatever we wanted because no one was going to uproot us again. One morning, I got a certified letter from my lawyer, Monica Reeves. Inside was the final draft of my will. Neatly written, fully notarized, updated to reflect exactly what I wanted. Emily got nothing, not a penny. The house I now lived in willed to Liam when he turns 21. Until then, a trust fund would cover his education, living expenses, and anything else he needed to find his footing. The rest of my estate, every bit of retirement savings, sale profits, and old insurance money would go to a fund I helped launch through the community center, the Mayfield Legacy Grant. It would help older women in crisis, women discarded by the very children they raised, women who needed just one more hand to pull them back into dignity. I'd already made the first donation, $50,000. I didn't tell Emily about the will. I didn't have to. She found out on her own 2 months later when she asked Monica for a copy of the estate plan just to be informed. She told her with a smile that she wasn't included. Emily called me that night. "Mom," she said, voice tight. "Is this real?" "Yes, you're cutting me out completely." "No," I said. "You did that all by yourself years ago when you signed me away like luggage and sold my things before I was even cold." She was silent. I continued, "You didn't just fail me. You erased me. And now you're learning what that feels like." She said, "I was sorry." And I said, "I forgave you. But forgiveness doesn't mean inheritance." Then I hung up. That was the last time we spoke. A month later, she moved quietly. No U-Haul, no goodbye. Just a faded for sale sign that finally came down after 2 weeks. The neighbors said she left town. Some say she went to California. Others say she got a job in a call center and moved in with a cousin. I don't know, and I don't need to, because the day she left, I sat on my porch with a cup of café con leche, looked out at the quiet street, and felt nothing but peace. Liam came outside with 2 pastelitos and sat beside me. "She's gone," he said. I nodded. Sometimes people leave when they realize they can't control the narrative anymore. "You think she ever try to come back?" "Maybe," I said. "But if she does, she find a fence that wasn't there before." I looked out at the garden, lilacs blooming, cilantro starting to sprout, bees dancing through the hibiscus. It was beautiful. It was mine. Later that year, I was invited to speak at the community center's elder justice seminar. They asked me to say a few words about financial abuse, power of attorney scams, and reclaiming your legal rights. I stood in front of that crowd, mostly women, mostly over 60, and told them the truth. "They will call you old," I said. "They will call you a burden. They will smile while stealing the life you built. But let me tell you something. There is power in the truth. There is power in silence. And there is power in the law if you're brave enough to use it. They clapped. A few women cried. One came up to me afterward, hugged me hard, and whispered, "Thank you for reminding me I'm not crazy." That's what it's really about. Not just revenge, but legacy. Making sure no one else gets left behind in a room that smells like bleach and pity. Making sure our stories aren't erased just because we can't carry our groceries anymore. I went home that night and looked around the little house I once thought was a step down from my past. But it wasn't smaller. It was freer. It was lighter. And as Liam set the table and asked if we could bake tres leches cake later, I realized I wasn't at the end of anything. I was finally at the beginning. They sent me to a nursing home and called me a burden. But I gave them a burden they'll never shake.